This is Gemara Baba Kama Baba Basra Daf Dalid. We're holding on Daf Gimel Amid Beis in middle of a discussion as to the fitness of an Eved to be a Melech. And we're in the middle of an incredible story of Herdis. How Herdis killed out the whole Beis Chashmanoi, that final young girl that threw herself from the roof and announced that anyone who claims to be from the Beis Chashmanai is indeed an Eved. And the Gemara, 2 lines at the bottom, teaches us, Amar man darish mikarev achecha tasam alecha melech. Said Hordis, who is the one that darshened that mikarev achecha has to be the king, meaning to exclude the Avadim. Hord is wondering who is the one that is disallowing him from being the king, and he says, of course, it's the Rabbanon on the last line of Gimel Beis. Come, katlinu lekula Rabbanon. Rachman alitzlan, Hordis gets up and shechs and murders all the Rabbanon. Shav kilabov ben buta. Lemishkal eitzimine, he leaves over one of the Rabbanon. Baba ben buta, why? Because he needs someone to talk to, he needs someone to ask advice from. So he leaves over Baba ben buta. As we turn over to Dalid Amid Aleph, Ahaderle Kalila Diale. Hordis places around Baba ben Buta's head a kalila, a crown of dalye, of porcupine, nakrinu le'ene, and he gouges out his eyes. He wants to make sure that he controls Baba ben Buta. So even though Hordis seemingly had Baba ben Buta on control, he still was not content. He still was nervous. Says Hordis, Yom Echad, one day, Dalit Amid Aleph, the second line, Asav Yasad Kamei, Hordis came and sat in front of Baba ben Buta, Amar, and he said, Chazi Mar, Hi Avda Bisha, my Kavid, and Hordis himself, in the guise of a commoner, of a peddler, says to Baba ben Buta, do you see? Do you see what this slave is doing? Do you see what's going on? Trying to egg on Baba ben Buta to say something against the king. Amar lei, responds Baba ben Buta, my ovid lei. What should I do to him? Meaning, what's the problem? Amar lei, Hordis says, Nalteimar, curse him. Amar lei, says Baba ben Buta, it says in the Torah, Gam b'madoach melech al tikalel. Even in your thoughts, do not curse a king. Says Baba ben Buta, I'm not cursing. Amar lei, Haila melechu. What do you mean? He wasn't fit to be a king. Amar lei, says Baba ben Buta, back levi asher ba'alma. Even if he was merely a wealthy person, I still would not curse him. Uksiv says in the pasuk, "V'chadir mishkavcha al tikalel ashar." Even in your bedroom, do not curse the rich. V'lo yehei el nasi, and even if he's not even considered an ashir, just a nasi. Uksiv says the Torah v'nasi v'amcha lo yitar. So says Baba ben Buta, I will not curse Hordis, whether he's fit to be a king, whether he's fit to be an usher, whether he's fit to be a nasi. So Amar lei, and again, Hordis is in disguise, trying to egg on Baba ben Buta. Amar lei, says Hordis, what do you mean? That's only when the person is acting appropriately. And this one is not acting appropriately. So says the Gemara, after we realize that there's not much going on over here, says Baba ben Buta that he must say something else. Amar le mistafina minei. Baba ben Buta said to Hordis, guess what? You're not listening to my psukim. You don't want my rationale, so I'll just say it straight. I am nervous of the king. Amar le responds, Hordis, leka inish dazal dilmalei. Says Hordis, above and Buta, there's no one that will go and tell the king. Don't worry. Mistafina minei. I'm nervous from him. Amar le leka inish. There's no one here to be nervous from. To also, that's going to go tell Hordis. Delay malay danavat yasimna. Says Hordis still in Concise. Tabam and Buta. Just me and you here. What's your problem, Bava? Curse the king. Says Bava and Buta, an important rule in life. Amar le ksiv. It says ki oif bashamayim. The bird in heaven, Yoelech Hasakol, will bring your voice. Ubal kinafayim, and the winged creature, Yagid Davar, will tell over something. Says Bava Buta, there's no such thing as complete secrecy. Says Bava Buta, I will not curse the king. After King heard this, realizes the incredible truth and honesty and lack of wanting to betray. Omar Le says, Hordis, I know! Guess what? I am Hordis himself. Ihaveyadi desiri Rabbanan kulei, and says Hordis, if I would have known that the Rabbanan were so careful with their words, Lo Ihave Katalina Leho, I would not have killed them all. But says Hordis, now what could I do of that person? Hordis feels bad. How could I do tshuva? Amar Le says, Bava Membuta, who kava oiresh alaylam. Says Bava Membuta, he who extinguished the light of the world, that he killed the Rabbanan, as the pasuk says, the famous pasuk, Hiner mitzvah v'tayra ar. What should you do? Yelech v'yasek v'oiresh alaylam. You want to do tshuva? Go deal with the ar of the world. Chsev and haru ilav kol hagayim. So what exactly did Bava ben Buta been told to do? To go learn Torah. Ikati Amri, another lashon, Achi Amrle, who Sime Einai Shalaylam, says Bava ben Buta to Hordis, you blinded the eyes of the world. Diksev by killing the Rabbanan v'haya imeinei aide hilech v'sasek b'einai shalaylam. So go and deal with the eyes of the world. Diksev hinani machalel es mikdashe goinuschem mechamad etzchem. As the pasuk says, I'll destroy the Beis Hamikdash, the pride, the desire of your eyes. So what is Bava ben Buta telling him? To go deal be'einei ha'ilam, to go deal with the Eirei Shalaylam, which is what? Torah, but more particularly, this is Bava ben Buta telling Hordis to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, the Einei of the world, the Beis Hamikdash. Amar Le says, Hordis mistafzina memalchusa. I'm nervous of the Roman government. I'm nervous they're not going to allow the Beis Hamikdash to be built. Amar Le says, Bava ben Buta, Shader Shlicha, send a shliach to the Romans to ask. V'leizel shata, travel for a year before reaching Rome. V'la'akiv shata, and remain in Rome for the year, prolonging the negotiations with the Romans. V'laheder shata, then come back for a year. Adahachi v'achi, within those 3 years, sasre le ubanisa le, you will have enough time to break down and rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And guess what? Avad Hachi, which of course that's how we got involved in this whole story, as we were dealing with the allowance to destroy and build a shul that brought us into the Beis Hamikdash, which came from the original Mishnah, the breaking down and building of a wall. Sholchule, finally, after the whole story, and heard they sent this emissary. He spent a year, he handled a year, he came back a year. In the interim, he rebuilt the whole Beis Hamikdash. Sholchule, the Roman government sends back Imloises Sartar al Tistar, Vim Sistere al Tivne, Vim Sistere Banisa, of the Bisha Basar to Avdin Mismalchin. The Romans said as follows: if you didn't start demolishing, don't build. If you already demolished, I said it wrong. If you didn't demolish, don't demolish. If you already demolished, don't build. And if you already demolished and built, which of course is what Herdis did, of the Bisha Basar to Avdin Malchasam, slaves ask for permission only after they do their wish. Imzainach alecha sifrach kan. If you're proud of the way that you worked, here sifrach kan. Here's your book of lineage showing that you're an eved. Loy raka, loy bar raka. You're not a raka. You're not the son of a raka. Hordis avda. You are a slave. Kalna mit aved. who made himself free. Says the Gemara, what's this word, Mayraka? Malchusa, that you heard this, have no element of Malchus Dechsev, as the Pasuk says, Enochayom Rachu Mashach Melech, V'Bayisim Mehacha, Vayikru Lefanav Avreich, Amri Mishlei Ra Avreich. Again, this is a term by Yosef HaTzadik, which Avrech comes to the word Av and Rach. He was a father and a king to Paroi. And the Gemara concludes, Amri Mishloi Ra Binyan Hordis, Loi Ra Binyan Na'a Miyamav. The binyan of Hordis was so exquisite and beautiful. Says the Gemara, if anyone has not seen a building of Hordis, you've never seen real beauty in your life. But not b'mai banye. So says the Gemara, what exactly was the beauty of the Beis Hamikdash that Hordis built? Amar Rabba teaches Rabba, he built b'avnei shisha. He built with marble stones, umarme, white and green marble. He could amri b'avnei kuchla, shaishe umarme, blue, green, and white marble. Apek shafa v'ayol shafa. There was a row protruding and a row recessed. And that's how the rows were one on top of another in these different colors, kabel, sida, so that there was a space for the cement. Savar l'mishaye badahava, he wanted to cover the entire Beis Hamikdash with gold. Amrule Rabbanan Shavke Dahachi, leave it. Why? Dahachi Shaper Tfei, this is more beautiful. Demerse ki advasa diyama, the different colors of marble interweaving with each other look like the waves of the sea. Teaches the Chachamim, it's beautiful, do not cover with gold. Asks the Gemara, after learning what Baba did, after learning how he did it, smack in middle of this lengthy Amud, first one in line is Ubaba. Asks the Gemara, how did he do this? Amar Rav Yudam Ravi, Tem Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Mipneiman Nenish Daniel, Meishe Hisi Eitzel and Vuchanetzar. Why was Daniel punished? Because he gave advice to Vuchanetzar how to escape HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wrath. Shenemar lehen Malka Malki Yishbar Alayich. V'chatich v'staka proik v'vasich v'michan anyonin hein tavi aracha l'shal lusech. Says the pasuk about Daniel that the advice was agreeable, but yet you should redeem that which you do. Is what Daniel telling you, Vuchanetzar. Uksev, and the psukim continue, Kulumata al Nebuchadnezzar Malka, be all the punishments that befell Nebuchadnezzar, Uksev Ulixas Yarchein Trey Asar, and says that the pasuk at the end of 12 months, etc. So Nebuchadnezzar wasn't punished, but Daniel was inappropriate for that which he said. So ask the Gemara, how did Baba Membuta do a similar thing by giving King Hordis advice how to do tshuva? Iba Yisema, says the Gemara, Shiny Avda Deschayev mitzvahs. So that's why he was able to give advice to Hordis, because at some level he was a yid, he was a chayev mitzvahs. Iba Yisema, Shiny Beis Hamikdash Diloi Malchus Lo Mit B'nei. Because if not for the Malchus who never had been rebuilt, so due to the incredible importance of building the Beis Hamikdash, that's why Hordis was allowed to give advice. Bab Membuta was allowed to give advice to Hordis. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Daniel, Minol and Tianish, where do we see that Daniel was punished? Ilema, if you're going to tell me, it's because Misham Dechsev, it says in the Torah of Atikra Esther, Lahasach, and Esther called to Hasach, Vamarav, who was Hasach? Hasach Zu Daniel. So that he had a higher position and then he was cut down from his greatness. That was his punishment. But according to the Man Amr, that he was called a Hasach, because everything that was done in the kingdom was through his mouth. Michael and Memar, where do we see a punishment for Daniel? Says the Gemara, Deshadviu leguva da'araisa. We know that Daniel was thrown into the den of lions. That was his punishment. And about 20 lines on the bottom, the first one line is Deshadviu. Says the Gemara, quoting the Mishnah, that the way the walls are built is Hakol Keminag Hamedina. Explains the Gemara, Kol Asuye. Why? What is this coming to include? La Asuye. This comes to include Asa Denhiga Bahutza V'Dafna. If a place that they build the wall, Bahutza V'Dafna, with different branches, that's how it's going to be built. That if the wall falls, then the land and the area and the materials belong to both of them, says the Gemara Pshita, of course. Loitzricha explains the Nafal Rashusa Dechan Minayu fell into one of their properties. Inami Defadinu Chad Rashusa Didei, or one of them took the initiative and cleared out the wall into his property. So Ma'u the Tevan Aviedach Hamoitz Bechaver Olav Haraya. I would have thought maybe the other guy is Hamoitz Bechavero. He has to bring the raya because the other guy already took it into his possession. Kamash Malan, that no, it's automatically owned by both of them. Continues the Gemara, 20 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Vachein, quoting the Mishnah, Vachein Begina Mokshanagu Ligdar Mechayvin Oisai. Says the Gemara, Ha Guf Akasha, the Mishnah is a stira. Amrit, you said Vachein Begina Mokshanagu Ligdar Mechayvin Oisai. In a place where it's normal to make a fence, then we obligate him to do such. What's the obvious diak? The obvious implication is astama ein mechayvin oisai. Without a minog, the norm is not to obligate. Then it says in a bika, if there's no minog to make the wall, then you do not. Ha-stama, what's a stama? Mechayvin oisai. So says the Gemara, we have the classical stira in the yukim, is the stam to yes obligate or not obligate to make the fence, the wall. Answers the Gemara, Hashtam San Gina Amrit Loi, Stam Bika Mibai. I don't understand. If a Stam Gina, you don't have to make a wall, certainly not in a Stam Bika. Answers the Gemara, Amr Abai Hachikamar. Stam Gina, Omakish, and Agu Ligdar Bebika Bechayvin Oisai, putting both cases together. Amar Rava and Cain, my avil. The word avil makes no sense if it's equatable in din. El Amarava Hachikam, Bechain Stam Gina, Kim Makashanagu Ligdar Dami, or Machayvin Isai. But Avil Stam Bika Makashanagu Shaloi Nagu Dami, Vein Machayvin Isai, and that's how the Gemara reconciles the stira. And 6 lines to the bottom, we quote the end of the Mishnah that what? Elim Ratza Kainis Natach Shalayu Bainem. Va'isa chazis, that if he wants, what does he do? He enters into his own property, builds a fence, and they make a sign indicating that it is indeed being built in one of their properties. Now this word chazit, says the Gemara, my chazis. Amr Rav Huna explains Rav Huna, achba le lekarna levar, that what do? They bend the top of the wall outside to know that the other fence is whom built it. V'neven milgav, why don't you angle it inward? Avir chavrei, says the Gemara, avir chavrei nami milvar. If he put it on his side, the friend will also make a sign. V'amar didi v'didei. So rather you make a sign facing outward, so you know that it's the inward guy's wall. Who? Ihachi asking Gemara 4 lines to the bottom. Hashta nami. Causes like chavrei v'amar didi v'didei. Who are you helping anything? The other guy can still make a sign. Gezuza Meida Yada explains the Gemara, the shearing is noticeable, it's able to realize which way it was built first. Ikidyamri, another Lashon Amar Avuna Mechabe Lekarna Milgav. Whenever Milvar do the other way, guys, the Chavre, Varmadi David Deyu. Yachi Ashanami Live the Chavre, I'll do the same thing. Varmadi David Deyu. Lefufa says the Gemara in the last line, made the Yada, it's able to tell which way it was done. At first, it's able to tell if you attach something afterwards. Ask the Gemara of Hami B'chutz Katani, Kasha, that is indeed a Kasha. Now, Rav Yechanan Amar, as we turn over to Dalet Amud Beis, says Rav Yechanan a different way. So the first way of learning Chazis, how do you make a sign, was a particular way that the wall was built in order to show whose property it's being built in. Says Rav Yechanan, no. Nishaye ba'amasa milvar, smear the wall with lime on the outside for an amma, and that will be a marker showing which side built the wall. Says the Gemara, the same kasha on the top line of Dalet Amud Beis, B'nevan milgav. Explains the Gemara, Avechavra milbar. V'amar di David Deyu, the other guy's going to do the same thing. Hiyachi the couple of the Chavre, says the Gemara, what do you mean? The other guy will peel off his line. V'amar di David Deyu. Kilufa meida yada. If you peel off the lime, it is noticeable, and therefore you'll be able to tell that originally it was on one side. Continues the Gemara 4 lines down. Hutza. What is a when you have a wall made out of hutzah, out of palm branches, Amar Rav Nachman, how do you make a sign? Sinufe Yereche Milvar. The tips go outward, and again, that shows us that the other side he built such a fence. Let them face to him. We have to be worried that the friends will do the same thing. The same he'll cut it down and do the same. Mishrak Leitina explains the Gemara, no, you coat it with mud, so therefore the tips cannot be removed. Ask the Gemara, he'll get rid of the mud and then he'll cut it down. Kilufa made the yada, says the Gemara, if you take off the mud, again it will be discernible. Abaya marhuta lesli takanta ella bishtara. If you have a fence made out of huta, says Abaya, the only way to prove which way is the one that built the fence is with a shtar. And finally, 10 lines down at the two dots, we quote the final din in the Mishnah. Avlam asu midas shnehem, if they built a wall by both of them. Amar le Rava mi barzikler Ravashi lo yaseh lo izeh v'lo izeh. They should not do this nor do that. And how are we going to know? Meaning, why are you making two signs? The Mishnah said that if they built the wall jointly, they make two signs showing that it's belonged by both of them. Says Rav, I don't understand this. Don't make any sign at all. One guy went and made a sign on his side of the property. And if his friend doesn't make a sign as well, Amr Didei, who will say the whole thing is his. But it sounds very odd, says the Gemara. The whole Mishnah is dealing with Ramayim, with swindlers. Kamash Malan, Amar Lei. So says the Gemara back. What do you mean? The first part of the Mishnah was the same thing, dealing with people that are going to try to swindle away the wall. Explains the Gemara. In the Reisha there was a din, and the din was that the wall goes to the side of he who built it. Once we had that din, then we needed to say it's akana, ela seifa. But in the din that we're discussing right now, dina katani. But in the Sefer, what's going on over here is there's no halacha that needs to be created this takanta. It's very simple. They both built the wall, they both get it. So why are we creating this whole interesting case? Amar Ravina, 3 lines from the wide lines. Hacha behutzi askinan lafuki midabaya damhutza lesle takanta lebishtara kamash malon. That's the chiddush over here, that the bechazis, you could actually make a sign even by Hutza. That is the Chiddush of the Seifa of the Mishnah. Continues the Mishnah on the top of the wide lines on Dalit Amid Beis. If one has a field on 3 sides of his friend's field, the Gadar Esarishain of Esashni of Esashlishis, and the guy on the outside, we have 1 field in the middle, and then someone has 3 fields on the outside. So the guy on the outside makes fences around 3 sides. So now what happens? This middle field is covered by 1, 2, 3 sides from the outer field. Ein mechayvin oisai, we do not obligate him to pay for the fence, the middle guy. Then Megagin Lavis I call. If the middle guy goes and makes a fence over the 4th wall of his own field, thereby showing that he's happy and he wants the fences, then he has to pay for all of these fences. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, halacha ki Rav Yosi. That's what we paskin. Damer Mavid Gadol Rav Yis Megali Love as Hakol. Says the Gemara, Loishna Amad Nikiv, Loishna Amad Makiv. It makes no difference whether the owner of the inner field went to make a fence on the 4th side, or when the owner of the outer field rose to make a fence on the 4th side. Either way, Rav Yosi holds the inner field must pay of all the walls, for all the fences, once a fence is made on the 4th side of the inner guy's field. Says the Gemara, Itmar. Ravuna Amar teaches Ravuna. Hakol lefima shegodar. Everything goes by what was spent to make the fences. So if the outside guy made expensive fences to start, now the inside guy, once the fourth wall is erected, will be obligated to pay for that. No, you don't have to pay for a fancy fence. Just have to pay for cheap reeds, something to create a fence. Ask the Gemara on the second opinion. Tanana Makav Chaver Mishal Ju Chaysa V'Gader Sarishan V'Zeshiva Shlishis In Mechayv Noisai Haravi is Mechayv Noisai Masiv Rav Yisi Amar Mam V'Gader Savias Magal Navasakol. So Bishal Maravanu Devakol V'Mashe Gadar Ba Hainu Deika Bein Tanakama V'Rav Yisi. Now we can understand the machlokes. Now what? Tanakama Savakol Fi Demei Kanim Bizol. So that's what Tanakama said in this brisa that the middle guy has to pay. What does he have to pay? He has to pay just the value of a cheap fence in Barumasha Gadar Loi. And on that, for Rav Yosi Savar, Hakol Fi Masha Gadar, that's the chiddush of Rav Yosi to add on. You have to pay for the whole value. Rav says that no, you always have to only pay for the cheap value of the fence. What is the difference between the Tanakama and Rav Yosi? What else are you going to give him? So it says the Gemara, according to Chibar Rav, there's no way of explaining the Brisa, and therefore proves the Gemara, like the first opinion, that Rav Yosi must hold that you pay for the value of the whole fence. Says the Gemara, Iba Yisema, 4 ways of understanding the machlokes between Rav Yosi and the Tanakama. Iba Yisema Agar Netira Ikabenayu. Either you could tell me that if you have to hire a watchman, Tanakama Savar Agar Netira in the Meikana Bezol, Rav Yosi the Meikana Bezol, you have to even pay for that. Again, what we're adding on is that there's other elements of watching. The whole kasha was that if the Tanakama already holds that you're paying for to make on bezol, what's the machlokes? So we're adding on, there might be other areas to watch. That Tanakama is saying that you have to pay for the watchman, but not for the cheap fencing. Tanakama you only have to pay for the fourth wall. So the second teretz is that when Rav Yosi says you have to pay for everything, it doesn't mean for the whole value. It means going backwards, not just for fence number 4, but for the original 3 sides. Number 3, only if the guy, the middle guy, then the Megagalavas I call, then he pays for everything if he made the fence. If the outside guy knows only pay for the fourth wall. Either way, you have to pay. Number 4, even if the outside guy, you don't have to pay him anything. And we'll pick it up from Daf Hey B'siyata de Shmaya.